Hi there and welcome to May's Market Update. I'm going to be bringing you through the market news that's happened in the last 30 days, going through the different markets that we assess and analyse here in Fairstone to give you an understanding about how money has moved and what's happening to your money in the background. The news this month has been revolving around the Middle East and what's been going on with the AI boom. But it's not just about that, there's a lot going on really in the background when you boil it all down. The first thing to talk about is the equity market. Equity markets have been reasonably resilient in the background. However, it's a bit of a mixed bag and boosted primarily by the AI boom that's going on at the moment. The big story really is going to be around the bond market, however, because equities will always be resilient, equities will make money over time, but what's been going on and telling a bit of a story in the background over the month of May is what's been happening with bonds. And then another part of the equity market that's been doing well has been the semiconductor market. So as part of that, there are two new companies that have made the $1 trillion valuation status in the last while as well. So you can see that all the companies that are linked or connecting to AI are doing really well in the background. Now, what's been happening on the other side of the equity market is that European equities have not been doing so well and lagging behind, and that's because Europe is a little bit more exposed to energy prices. Europe has to buy all of its energy in and therefore has not been performing as well and looking a little bit less resilient than the technology companies that you see based in the US predominantly. But equities fluctuate all the time and it's about taking a long-term view on those equities. So I said earlier about the bond market being the real news story of the month of May, and maybe before I jump into it, let me explain what a bond is. A bond is a loan. It can be a loan to a government or a loan to a company, and what you get in return for that loan is you get an income payment from it. But they are something that can be traded openly and you can buy and sell a bond on a given day. So the bond market is one of those interesting stories because equities and stocks and shares have been doing really well, but the bond market is trying to tell you exactly what it really feels, thinks is going on in the background. So bond yields have been rising, which generally shows that there's bad news in the background. And this would run alongside concerns over the Middle East and what's been going on in Iran and the Straits of Hormuz, because that has obviously clamped up all of the oil trade in the countries around the world and put pressure on European equities, as I said earlier. And the US administration can go around saying that everything's great and everything's fine, even though inflation is staying steady. But the bond market will really tell the true story about whether it likes what's going on or not. And because we're seeing yields coming up at the moment, that's a sign that it doesn't like what's coming down the tracks. Consumer sentiment in the States from an economic point of view is looking quite resilient as well, but that could be because after the pandemic, US citizens had lots of savings and extra money, and is that drying up in the next while? Interest rates might be going up as well, which could put pressure on the US economy in the background too. So really interesting to watch out for, and that's what we think is the true news story this month. The commodity market is going to be directly linked to what's going on with the Middle Eastern conflict again, because the price of oil drives the demand of everything and what's been going on in the background. And then within the commodity sphere as well, you'll also talk about the price of gold and what's been going on. And why gold is really interesting is that when investors are really rattled and scared, they'll flock to gold as a safe haven asset. So to talk about oil firstly, that is volatile. It's up and down. It's directly linked to the Middle Eastern conflict, as I said. Now, is there signs of hope of a deal being struck in the Middle East for things to cool down? If it does, great. You'll see the oil price come down. But if it's going to remain somewhat stale or not moving at all, then it might stay exactly where it is and then put pressure on interest rates, etc. And we might see overall global economic slowdown on the back of that. Currencies are interesting. Currencies are essentially a bet on what people think a country is doing with its monetary policy. So you'd look at the dollar versus the pound versus the euro, and whether a currency is moving up or down will tell you whether the currency market thinks that country is going to do well or not. So a really interesting one to see. The US has stayed strong. The pound has been a bit wobbly because of the trouble with the UK government, and the euro is also looking a little bit wobbly based on the equities or the European economic indicators pointing a little bit towards some sort of slowdown in Europe as well. So always remember to stay diversified and review your portfolio. And as always, if you want to get in touch with an expert, please reach out to Fairstone.